Hey, welcome back to the 2025 Bible Plan Family Style Podcast.
Week 9, huh?
Week 9.
Wow, man.
Colby, we are knocking some of these books of the Bible out. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. Is that biblical to say, knocking them out?
I don't know. Knocking them down.
Like a hit list?
Yeah.
I guess that's not right.
I don't know. Hey, but we knew what you meant. It was good intentions.
We've been mowing them down, so we've got Genesis knocked out and Exodus. And this week we're going to finish up Leviticus, and then New Testament we've been through Matthew, and we're going to finish Acts and jump into Mark, so making some progress.
I mean, we're also knocking down months. I mean, we're headed into March this week.
Blows my mind, bro.
I know. So you guys have been reading for 2 full months if you've been, doing the reading plan with us. We've been reading for 2 full months, so that's good.
I got to tell you, Colby, some exciting stuff that's happening is the conversations that I find myself in throughout the week. And so people coming up, and even at the pastor's conference, a couple from our church was there, and we in one of the breaks they had come up and said, hey, in the reading today, and we just began to talk about the reading in Acts and some things that came out. So it's exciting. I've had people email, and speaking of which, Irene, part of our fellowship, Miss Irene, she sent a video that I'd like to chat about it a little bit, but I am going to drop a link in the description. Well, hopefully we can get the link in the description. Mm-hmm. But it's fascinating, and it's from a guy called the Bible Coach. You ever heard of him, Colby?
Not until this week.
I hadn't heard him either, and I will tell you. And so, if as you guys are listening to this, I don't know this guy's doctrine. I don't know anything about him. It's a fascinating video. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, and different. It's just a fascinating. He's a guy who is he studies the brain, and so he knows how the brain works. He's a brain science guy, but he also loves the Lord, and he loves the Bible, and so. It's a brief video. It's about 15 minutes, Colby.
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes, something like that. And in the video, he brings out a couple of pretty valid points. He talks about how that when we read, our brains don't get fully engaged into story mode until we've been reading for about 10 minutes. And so he suggests when we read the Bible that we should read it longer than 10 minutes. So he actually talks about devotions. Like some people will just do a devotion, so it's like a verse and then like a short brief thing. So it's like 30 to 90 seconds. So his point is, like, a lot of people aren't even really engaging that storytelling part of the imagination part of your brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very valid point because, I mean, you look at Bible reading in general. I mean, if you just compare it to how you would read, a fictional book, a non-fictional book, that's, reading just a simple chapter a day is not exactly, how you read other books. So just for the mind, aspect of it and the brain aspect of it, I can see where he's coming from, where some days you just like we said, you just want to get it in, you just want to be able to have that daily encouragement, want to say that you read the Bible, glean something from it, stuff like that. But I'm sure there's days for me, there's days for you, there's days for the people listening where you have a little bit more extra time. And I mean, I've been blessed. There's a couple times preparing for these shows where, you read multiple chapters to kind of, try and catch up. And I mean, sometimes you kind of, once you get past that first, reading, and that's also why I do really like this plan, where it's not just a chapter a day, it's multiple chapters a day, where you kind of get past that first chapter, and you're kind of you're in a better mind space where you're kind of, more focused, more honed in on what's being said. So, I see that, and I think it is, like you said, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see, and again, we know that, different people, read the Bible differently. Different people's brains work different from one another. I mean, seriously, like, some people, it's better for them to listen. Some people, it's better for them to read. And some people, which what this guy said is, it's better for them to read out loud. Yeah. That's another thing he brought up.
Yeah, not only read out loud, but he talks about reading out loud and adding emotion. So I tried it, and I have been trying it. It's new for me. Like, I don't normally read. And I usually read. So
can we get Mrs. Perry's perspective on it?
So that's what I was going to say. Usually when I read, it's in the morning before everybody gets up. And so it's just me and the dog. And the dog is not spirit-filled. And so the dog is always interrupting me. So when I start talking, the dog assumes I'm talking to her. So she comes over and starts needing attention, whether it's grabbing things or nipping at things and all that stuff. And so, but I have tried. But not only does it say to read out loud, but read with emotion. So then you're reading it like you're engaged in the story, which is good. I'm not saying it's good. Mm-hmm. It's a little silly at 5:30 in the morning when it's just me and the dog.
This might be a strategy to try out in the car in the parking lot.
No, but he does have some valid points. They're fascinating, and so we'll try and put the video in the link, and we'd like to hear your feedback.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out and tell us what you think. If there's some things in there, it's interesting. That's fair enough to say, right, Colby?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, the people that I always see on Sundays, let me know how you thought, like what you thought about those videos, or that video specifically.
Yeah.
And just let us know. Send us an email. You know, it's Bible Plan Family Style at ccph.org. No.
No, I think I wish we could find a shorter one because it is pretty long, but it's familystylepod at ccpalmharbor.org.
I was close.
Hey,
Familystylepod at ccpalmharbor.org. See, now I got it.
We need something short like yo at ccpalmharbor.
I think that might be taken. Maybe not at ccpalmharbor.org.
So thank you, Irene, for sharing the video. I'm very grateful for it. And then along those same lines, we're talking about reading, and when you read 10, 15 minutes, you're getting the context. And one more thing about that video that I think his name is Keith Farron, the Bible coach guy. One other thing he said is context, like you're reading things in context. So he says you would never go watch a movie and watch 5 minutes of the middle of the movie and then assume you know the whole thing. So reading thing in context. And so that ties into Sue from New York, who sent us an email this last week. And she said that this time going through Leviticus, she's read through it multiple times. This time she took the time to read the introduction to the book of Leviticus in her study Bible. And so I thought, Colby, what a great thing to talk about, is a great resource if it's your first time, or maybe you're a pro at it, but is to have a study Bible. Study Bibles usually have, when you get ready to start a new book, they have that, the page about, hey, this is what's going on, this is who wrote it, and it kind of gives you the context of what you're fixing to read.
Yeah, and it also gives you a lot of good pointers on how to, cross-reference scriptures and verses and stuff like that. I think a lot of people, look at a study Bible as something that you kind of, pick up and use later on, after you get your first Bible, after you kind of get like footing, if you're new to Christianity. But I know personally a couple people who their first Bible, they've been saved. Their first Bible was a study Bible, and it's been so helpful for them. It's been helpful for me to have friends with a study Bible, because then I can get all their blurbs. I know that's kind of, in one of the home groups I go to, we just a lot of it is we bounce off each other, the different study Bibles, we bounce off stuff like that. So it is a great resource. I can't agree more with you.
One thing about a study Bible, they are not travel size. They are usually pretty big.
They're
not going to sneak that thing in there. It's good. No, but they're a great resource. So Sue, thank you for those insights in Leviticus, and then thank you for reminding us of what a great resource a study Bible is. And then our very own Jen, our drummer Jen, she texted me this week. Yes, and yep.
Just seriously, I don't know how she plays all those instruments.
She sent me a link, and I forgot about this, Colby, and that is that we're going through Leviticus, which, praise the Lord, we're almost through it. We're going to finish it up. It's been a great book, and there's some good insights that are in there, but sometimes it can be a little difficult, right? But she shared that, and I forgot about it, is the tabernacle experience in Tarpon Springs. Like, it's right here. It's 10 minutes from our church.
I had no idea this existed. Like, absolutely no idea. I saw you showed me the video, and I was like, what the heck? It's very cool. That is a very cool. It's a replica of the actual tabernacle we're talking about in Leviticus.
Yeah, and it's indoors, and so if you're not familiar with it, it's in Tarpon Springs. It's off of Alternate 19, and we'll try and drop a link to it. I think it's a Facebook link, but it's actually the Leslie Hale Teaching Center, and they have a Bible museum, I believe, but then they have this tabernacle experience where you can walk through and see, and it's narrated as well. And Colby, if I read correctly, it's free. Like you just have to make an appointment, and
I think I saw that too, or in the
suggested
video.
Donations at the end.
Yeah.
And so I have not done it, so I'm not promising I will. My schedule's a little tight, but I think it would be fascinating to see and actually to put.
Should we do it and vlog it?
I don't know what that is.
It's like we both go in and we take a video of us doing it.
No.
Like, this is Ben and Colby, and we're going through Leslie Hale's Teaching Center.
Colby, let me just say this, bro. You have a face for vlogging. I do not have a face for vlogging.
Come on now. Oh, dude,
I have
this
a face for podcast.
All right, this face for radio.
That's it. Okay, moving on. So, it's a couple of good resources. We'll try to put the link in there. So, the video from the reading, the Bible coach, and then Jen sharing that temple experience. We're going to drop that in there. But then also, Colby, in our reading this week, we're transitioning back to another gospel. So we've done the Gospel of Matthew, and now we're going to finish up Acts, and we're going to go do the Gospel of Mark. And we'll get into some of the specifics of the Gospel of Mark. But I wanted to mention another great resource as you're reading if you want something to help in the Gospels, and it's called the Harmony of the Gospels. And so what this tool is, guys much smarter than me have taken the Gospels and they put together what is a harmony. In other words, where it is so like it might be in the Gospel of Matthew, it might be in the Gospel of Mark, and it might be in the Gospel of John. And it's fascinating to look and see what we have where all four Gospels have about Jesus, where they're all tied in together. And it also kind of gives you like a timeline. Like a lot of people don't know this, but some of the Gospels, it's not necessarily written in the timeline fashion. Like Matthew, I think, focuses on themes and events instead of like in a chronological order. So it kind of puts that stuff in perspective.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right. So anything else before we get into what we're going to cover this week in our reading plan?
No, I think you covered it all. That was a lot of helpers and content. We're giving you freebies right now.
You can't get this just anywhere.
You can't. It's not like it's on the internet or anything.
Especially not the sarcasm. Okay, so week 9, which covering February 24th to March 2nd, we're going to be going through Psalm 55 to 61. We're going to be finishing up Acts, so we're going to start in Acts 27, finish up the book of Acts, and then we're going to jump into Mark, the Gospel of Mark. And then, praise the Lord, we're going to finish Leviticus, and we're going to jump right into the ever-exciting book of Numbers.
Again, that's going to be a first time for me, too. Leviticus and Numbers, that's going to be a first time. You know what's cool? I guess another plug. We are at Calvary Chapel, Palm Harbor, but we also have a plant from our church up in Crystal River. We have some much desired guests, according to some of our listeners from up there that want to come down that maybe own a coffee shop. But their Pastor Stephen's one of my favorite teachers I ever get to listen to. And we've been through Genesis, we've been through Exodus, and I've actually been listening. They just have been going through Exodus in their midweek. So if you guys were interested in maybe getting some recent teaching on the books that we've been going through in the Bible plan, you just check out their app and they got it. And I know we have the logs of Pastor Brett teaching through these books as well. So those are always, I love listening to the pastors I know teach the stuff that I'm reading currently.
I got to see Pastor Stephen at the pastors' conferences last weekend. He's a lot of fun to be around. He is a great Bible teacher as well. You're correct. Kobe, we're blessed, and just in this area, and with Pastor Brett and Pastor Stephen, we have some great Bible teachers that we're surrounded with. So let's talk about Psalm. So in the book of Psalm, we're going to actually read a verse that I've heard Pastor Brett reference multiple times. And it's the one in Psalm 55, verse 22. It's cast your burden on the Lord, and he shall sustain you. And so Pastor Brett often talks about casting your cares and casting out, and it's that physical action of doing things. So excited we're going to go over that verse this week. And then one of the other Psalms just to bring out that we're going to talk about is Psalm 59. It's a unique Psalm, and that I feel like, Colby, like the last week, there's been a lot of forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, my bones and ache. The last few weeks we've had a lot of those type Psalms. And then Psalm 59 that we're going to go through this week, it's a little different. This one is where David is being pursued by Saul. And this is actually where David kind of turns, in his prayers, he actually asks for the Lord to come and judge the wicked. He asks for judgment to come down and to actually, vindicate him. So
yeah, I was like, what was I thinking of? But it was when Pastor Jim was teaching Jonah on Sunday and talking about judgment and how we are to, allow God to do that. And then that was a great message, by the way. I loved it.
yeah, can we time out for? I will agree with you. That was a great message.
Spectacular.
One of the things that I was thinking about as he was teaching, some good stuff, and Carrie and I both jotting down some good notes. But what was fascinating, Kobe, is that through that whole thing, I'd never thought of this before. Jonah was reluctant, like he wasn't all in,
yeah.
but yet the Lord still ministered to the people. So the guy who was doing the Lord's work wasn't necessarily all in, but yet the Lord still worked. It just shows that he loves to bless his people, even if the guy who's doing the work is an idiot.
Yeah, seriously, like can you imagine Jonah kind of goes up there and he does his half-hearted message, and he's kind of, thinking that no one's going to say anything, and it's just the simple words that God told him to say are all he needs. Like, it's just this deadpan, like, repent or you guys are going to die. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, what?
Then he gets mad.
Yeah, serious.
I knew you were going to do it, Lord.
Back to Psalms, though. Another thing, Psalms 57, verse 9 and 10, it says, I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your steadfast love is great to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. And for me, that word steadfast really stuck out to me, as I read just the different things we see in Acts and Leviticus, and the things that I see in my day-to-day life. Just the fact that God is continually loving you. It's not something that I may waver and go up and down during the day, but God's love is steady, it's steadfast, it's continual. And for me, that word has just been like ringing in my head. Just the fact that God's love is steadfast.
Yeah, and I know we haven't got there yet, Kobe. We're still working our way through, Leviticus and Numbers, and eventually we're going to get to the First, Second Samuel, and we're going to learn about David. But what's fascinating, and I don't know if every Bible has this. I know study Bibles have it. At the beginning of these Psalms, there's actually a note, and so a lot of the Psalms that we're going to be reading this week, it actually says exactly what was going on, like what David was going through and what this psalm. And so we can read, maybe I'm speaking for myself, we can read the Bible and we think that, this person, they had everything, they had everything put together and they were great, but it kind of gives the context of, like, he was running for his life, or he was in the middle, or, this last week, week before, he was committing adultery with a woman. And here is the psalm that he had, praying for forgiveness, asking for the Lord to forgive him. So it kind of gives that context of, like, real life. Yeah,
it's hard to read the Bible without putting the characters in the Bible on a pedestal, and obviously I'm not saying we're putting them on the same pedestal as God or anything like that, but I do think it's hard to, like, we look at them as characters, and we look at them as guys who, since we know their ending, we kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, even in their struggle and in their ups and downs, but they're living the same life with their flesh, that we did, and that's a really good reminder. That's something. I think the theme of this episode is how we read our Bibles and what our perspective, which is good. That is, especially as we kind of get through a couple months of this reading plan and get through Leviticus and then the Numbers. Like, it's important to know why you're reading and who you're reading about and how that applies to what you're doing, how that is. These people are just like you.
I got at the pastors conference. I ran into a gentleman. I connected to him through my older brother, who Andy Flew, pastor at Fort Walton Beach, Calvary Chapel, Fort Walton Beach. Tripp is his name, and he has a book, and he worked with a guy named last name is Finfrock, and he did an inductive Bible study.
His last name is what?
Finfrock.
Okay. All right.
Spell it. No, seriously, he's like a legend. Don't laugh. He's like a legend in Calvary Chapel. But he would go all over.
I'm not laughing at him.
Stop.
Okay, sorry.
So he does an inductive Bible study class, but from what I understand, I never took that specific. I've done inductive Bible study classes, but that one is like really intense. Like, it's really, really good. But what Tripp found out is that he was working with Mr. Finfrock, and he would go overseas, and you didn't have the time to invest like a week. And so he summarized it, and he has an abbreviated inductive Bible study class. So I have one of his books, and I'm actually thinking about handpicking a couple young adults and going through this inductive Bible study class. But one of the things that they talk about is, in that observation, is that you do engage your imagination. Like, be in the story, walk in the room, walk in the, you're at the Sea of Galilee, or you're there, you're there when Stephen's being stoned, or you're there when Paul's being, and so in the moment, like, you're engaging, and kind of similar to what we're talking about, you're reading and not being scared to put your emotion in there and the reality of the rest of the word.
That's something I had to do. This is going a few episodes back, but back when Moses goes down from Mount Sinai and the people are worshiping idols, and it's like man, you read that and you're like, what are these idiots doing? I don't know if that's a podcast friendly word, but I'm going to say it anyways. Like, it's like, what are these guys doing? But then it's like, man, you know how many times I complain? You know how many times there was a dude going slow in the right lane today, and I'm whining about it to myself and grumbling and complaining? Like, it's just you have to be able to. For me, I had to be able to put myself in those shoes, and really dig deep to understand how I would probably have the same reaction, the same problems as these people do in these situations in the Bible.
That's good. That's good. All right. So that's looking forward to Psalm, continuing through Psalm this week. Where you want to jump to next? You want to talk New Testament or Old Testament?
I think we go do some Leviticus. We had some popular verses in Leviticus this week. Chapter 18. But it was okay. Little story, I guess, story time. But I was out and about, at I think it was a coffee shop, reading this Leviticus 18, and I was at the coffee shop, and at the table next to me, while I was reading Leviticus 18, was a gay person. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
well, you just did. So
sorry, oopsies. That's not. Hey, that's
okay.
It's okay. Anyways, but I thought it was interesting. It was funny. But what it made me think of is like, I feel like those verses, they get like hammered. You see it. I think it was Patty Height was talking about it back when she came, where she was talking about the only Bible verse she knew when she was living that worldly lifestyle was Leviticus 18:22, and how it's kind of become this like cry against like homosexuality, which it is. That's what the verse is. But people kind of like use it as a hammer and use it not how verses in the Bible should be used and stuff like that. And it was just interesting. It was like I could have just like been like, hey, can you read this for me real quick? Like, obviously I did not do that. I wouldn't. But it's just, I think it's an interesting perspective to put where we read these verses and we read we see that this lifestyle that's lived out on a day-to-day basis by so many people, but we shouldn't use these verses as weapons to tear people down. That's not what the sort of the spirit is and stuff like that. So that just is what stuck out to me when I was reading that, and I thought that was an interesting anecdote for me.
And Colby, you're actually, so Leviticus it's God is speaking to his people, his children, his chosen people, and he's actually declaring, he's showing them that he's holy. Like, this is the expectation for his people, and they're going to be set apart from the world. So I'm reminded, even in your story, that as God's chosen people, he has an expectation that we will look different than the world. And sometimes, I guess, as Christians, we can get almost offended that heathens act like heathens, but heathens aren't going to act like believers, and Christians shouldn't act like heathens, but that's one of the themes, I think, and I will say this, Leviticus 18, when you read that chapter, and we don't have to go into detail on the podcast because I don't know if Stevie's listening, and so I don't have to do all that stuff, but I will say this, when you read Leviticus 18, it's shocking to think that 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, the Lord had to put this stuff in here to say, hey, this is detestable and don't do this. And so some people will think like, hey, over the time we've gotten, the depravity of man's gotten worse, but you can see they were doing the ugly, gross things even back then.
It's kind of where you're talking about like why Christians shouldn't be surprised when heathens act like heathens. That's just, that's lost. That's so lost. It's like when, I don't know if all of you guys know this, but one of my jobs I do is I coach kids basketball, right? So if I was to, little Johnny comes and he's his first time ever playing basketball, and he picks up the basketball and he just takes it and he runs. He doesn't take a single dribble. I'm sure you guys have kids at home and they play basketball. You've seen them do this. So, but if I'm, or say he runs the wrong way, he doesn't go for the basket, stuff like that. He does something that he doesn't know. Why should I get mad at little Johnny for, not being able to play basketball when he has never played basketball? He does not know what basketball is. Instead, the simple thing is to show him how to play basketball. It is to show these heathens who God is and what He is and how He affects your life. And then when, if little Johnny, he's played basketball for a little bit, and then he's still doing it wrong, that's when you come and correct. But it's not something where you should, you can't correct before there's foundation. There's nothing to correct there. That's just, one in one ear, out the other.
Mm-hmm. As we're getting ready to finish Leviticus, a couple things that I've noticed, and then going back and reading a few things. A couple of themes that I've seen in Leviticus, maybe I haven't seen them before, I haven't seen them so clearly, is that I begin to really see the holy character of God, like He is holy, and His expectations are for us, for His people to also be holy, and so it's His will is for His people to be holy, and so to see the sinfulness of mankind, like the depravity of mankind, and then He has to tell his people, hey, this is not okay, don't do this. And so he's teaching he's showing the priest, he's instructing the priest on how to assist people in worship, but he's also telling the people on how to live a holy life. It's fascinating. You see God's presence, you see personal holiness in response to the holiness of God, and even restitution. I think that's one of the things that we forget, is that even in personal relationships, Colby, like you see, like people will get a relationship, like let's just say you and I, something happens and there's a relation. Maybe I'm just going to use a theoretical. I've told a lie, or I've done something that's affected you, and then,
come on, bro.
Then we come and say, well, I'm sorry. Well, sometimes there needs to be a restitution. I mean, that, in Leviticus, there were some things where there had to be a restitution that had to be paid. And so I think that sometimes there are places where, yes, we need to seek forgiveness, but there also needs to be a restitution. And even in something like that, maybe the restitution wouldn't necessarily be that you buy something or you pay for something, but the restitution would be the proof in the apology. Like you can see that the lying has stopped or ceased or whatever. So it's good.
Amen.
Definitely, without a doubt, in the book of Leviticus, it's been very clear what's clean and what's unclean.
For sure. For sure. And, are we ready to go forward to Acts? Because I have a fun connection between Acts and Leviticus.
Well, do your fun connection, and then I want to slide back because I want to talk about Numbers, because we're starting a new book.
Oh, yes. Let's do Numbers first.
Are you sure you won't?
Because
forget?
we can get this when we get to Acts.
Okay.
I won't forget.
Okay.
I have it in notes.
So we're going to start Numbers, and that what's fascinating is, and I didn't get this on myself. I read this from I think it was J. Vernon McGee in one of his commentaries. What's fascinating is in the whole book of Leviticus. So Exodus, the children of Israel are leaving Egypt, and they're going to Mount Sinai. In the whole book of Leviticus, geographically, they've never moved.
Wow, that's crazy.
They've just been sitting there getting the rules and the laws and building and all the rest of the stuff, but they haven't moved. So when we get to Numbers, now we're going to move. So it's going to be 38 years. They're going to start moving. And what should take 2 weeks, so a 2-week trip, ends up taking 40 years.
Holy moly.
Because of a lack of faith. And so actually the book of Numbers, we're going to have 2 censuses. We're going to have, did I say that right, Colby? Censuses? Like when you take a census.
Synthesis.
Where
you were close. I think you got it.
Yeah.
I think you got it.
So they're going to count the people.
A census.
Census.
Yeah. Never mind. It's funny. Okay, Okay, guys, at home, what happened was I have a literature college class right now, and I did a synthesis, which is like a summary, which is what I thought you were about to say.
Oh.
But you're talking about a census where they're counting people.
Count people.
There we go. We're good.
So the book of Numbers has 2 counting of peoples. The beginning, when they left Egypt and they're beginning to start this journey in the wilderness, and then there's another one at the end when they get ready to go in the promised land. And the reason is because those people that started the journey aren't the ones that end the journey. And so in the book of Numbers, we'll see words like wilderness and disobedient and punishment, but we'll also see obedience and blessing as they get ready to enter into the promised land. So fascinating stuff. So excited for Numbers.
I'm excited to dive into it. Again, first time for me reading through it.
That's all I got, Old Testament. Hit me with your Acts Leviticus tie-in.
All right, so Acts 27, right? So we're moving to the New Testament. So if you're with us, start flipping pages, right? So Acts 27 is the story of Paul. He's him and a crew. They're setting out for sea, and then there's a storm, and basically So Paul, again, Paul tells them to go or not to go. They go.
Yep.
And then once we slide down to kind of as they okay, basically the whole story, right, is Paul is kind of, once the storm gets bad, he's kind of directing them and giving them specific directions. And for me, what I thought immediately from was Leviticus and how, like, the specific directions of being clean and unclean and stuff. And it was interesting. Again, it's the same God in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And it was just interesting to see, how similar, like, the instructions that, God was giving Paul and God was giving Aaron and Moses and stuff like that was from the Old Testament and New. So that's when I saw it, I was excited because it reminded me of Leviticus, and that's what we're doing in the reading plan.
Very good, Colby. Nice. Just a side note, this passage is quoted often by Calvary Chapel pastors, the old school ones that came from California, because a lot of them were surfers. Chuck Smith was a surfer. And so they'll reference Acts 27, verse 44, as there's actually surfing in the Bible.
Nice. You ever been surfing, Ben?
No. Do I look like I surf, bro? Come on.
I don't know. You surprise me sometimes. With the things you do.
In a good way or in a bad way?
Usually a good way.
Usually? I don't know how to answer that.
I'm just saying. I could see you being like, yeah, I've surfed before. I can't surf for nothing. I tried it one time. I couldn't even get up on the board. I kept falling.
Well, so for me, because I'm tall, my center of gravity, the center is way too high, and I just don't have it. Thaddeus, my nephew, he had a skimboard, and he makes it look so easy. And what's those guys out there at the beach we go to? Indian Shores?
Indian Rocks?
Yeah, those boys, the Juke Squad.
Yeah.
You watch those kids out there, what they do with a skimboard? It's amazing.
I don't get it, man. That's they're like skateboarding, but on the water. It's crazy.
I grab it, I throw it, and actually got a little, I don't know if you call it a gallop or a trot or whatever, and I'm going. And then everything in my body says, don't jump on that thing. It's not going to end well. So I didn't. That was the end of my skimboarding surfing career right there.
I think I could have told you that before your body told you that.
Where are we at? New Testament.
Acts, and Mark.
Okay, so finishing up the book of Acts. And so Paul has been arrested in Jerusalem, and they're taking him to Rome. So we're going to end the book of Acts this week. And I'm going to see if we can put a link in the description. So many links this week. And maybe it's overwhelming, Colby. I just want to give as many resources as possible.
No,
But this is the timeline of Paul, because he does so much stuff. Like he's traveling, he's moving, he's doing all that. And so it's actually a link you can click on, and it shows you the timeline of Paul's life. And the reason I think it's cool is because we're going to continue to read through the New Testament. We're going to get to these epistles, where we're going to read in Ephesians and Philippians. And when you have that timeline, you can go back and look and say, okay, this is where it ties into Acts. Like when he's leaving, when he's talking to the elders at Ephesus, it's kind of all. I don't want to overwhelm or consume, but Pastor Brett brought this out. I think it was last year when I was teaching in Ephesians. He's like, when you're reading the book of Ephesians, you recognize that Paul was there for 3 years as a pastor, and then Timothy was also there. And so you read the book of Timothy, where Paul is writing to Timothy. So you have, Ephesians is in Acts, Ephesians is the book of Ephesians, but then also it's just fascinating how it all ties in together. So finishing up Acts, Paul's been arrested, he's heading to Rome, and then we're going to start one of my favorite gospels, and that's the Gospel of Mark. And the reason I like it is because Mark, again, tradition says that John Mark was writing for the Apostle Peter. So Peter is kind of narrating to John Mark, and he's writing it. But the book of Mark, the gospel, is very brief and blunt. It's very short and sweet. It's like action-packed. It's like you have all these miracles. I mean, it's just loaded with Jesus' miracles. It's an exciting book. And so for me, Colby, in this reading plan, having all this excitement of Mark and watching Jesus and these miracles, it's going to be like reading like all this action-packed stuff as compared to our Old Testament reading, where we're in Leviticus and Numbers. So it's going to be like,
it's a good balance.
I may change the way I read, just like which one I read first, just to help with the, you know what I mean? But
are you like I need to read the action first, so I'm excited, so then I could bleed over to the Old Testament, or I need to read the Old Testament first, so I have that kind of the action to look forward to in Mark?
Yes, I will read my Old Testament first,
I think that's how I am too.
Jump. But now it's going to change. So when we get into like when we start talking about King David and King Solomon, it might switch and I might go back the other way. It depends. So right. I'm not
I
rigid.
think honestly I switch usually because of how it is in my phone. Like if I pick up from the last time that I read that night, so say I went from Leviticus to Acts, which I did this week. My phone Bible will already be in Acts, so I'll just do my Acts and then go backwards. So it's kind of like a ladder for me, up and down, like Donkey Kong.
This is funny. Judge me if you will, but I'm actually doing a hard copy. So I have the little trifold thing, and I bought a used Ryrie Study Bible, which I love. It's from the 70s. It's got these old tabs in it, and so I'm old school. So I'm physically reading a hard, and I have a checklist. But I have to go in my iPad every so often and have to scroll into plan and check, because if I don't, then when people look at my iPad and I click on my plan, it looks like this guy's not even reading.
He's a fraud.
Fake news.
Ooh, they throw a tomato at your face. You're like, where did you get that from?
As long as it's not canned tomatoes. So the book of Mark is brief, action-packed. It's written in a simple style. And one of the words that's used very common in the book of Mark is the word and. And the reason is because it's so action-packed. We're going to go from one action event to the next, and then it's going to be common. And so Mark is going to display Jesus as a servant. He's also going to show us a lot of the humanity of Christ, like his human emotions, his human limitations, and a lot of his human side. So I'm excited for Mark. And we should go through it quite quickly because there's only a handful of chapters in Mark. So good.
Yeah. Are we ready to maybe talk about what we got from this?
Yeah. So yeah. You want me to go first, Colby? You want to go first? Like what are you gleaning from your reading? Like this last week, is there anything that jumps out to you? Is there any overall themes or certain passages that have just been really encouraging to you?
Well, that Psalm, like I said, Psalm 57, the steadfast love was really encouraging for me the whole week. And for me, as I've been reading, I've been trying to not only read something either, the night and then apply it the day after, or the morning and apply it the day after, where I want to be able to have immediate applications for the scripture that I read. Whether it is just what Old Testament, New ideas, stuff like that. Like I want to be able to be driving to work, or be driving to the gym, or be going to do, eat lunch or stuff like that. And, when I notice something off, or when I notice something, not going good, being able to apply that stuff that I was reading. And just that's what my focus has been, is just being able to take the stuff on the page and put it into my life. Not just, in thought and in philosophy, but in actual, living and how I live. And that's something you talked about the other day, where we were talking about the armor of God, and how, we should, be thinking about, not only, having the armor on, the day after we read the chapter, or the day after someone teaches it to us, but, it has to be put on, every single day, and it has to be put on and applied every single day. So for me, I think that's the blessing of daily reading, is having this message, having these ideas that can help you day by day. So I just have been trying to do as good as I can of immediately applying those messages and applying them to my life.
I guess very good, Colby. It's encouraging, and so listening to you, just excited. I'm glad you're here, Colby. I'm excited to see what the Lord's doing in your life, and hear you share. At the pastors' conference, one of the pastors made this quick comment, and I really liked it. And I thought about you guys, young adult men, and he said something to the effect of, it's amazing what the Lord can do with a young man and a stone, right? You think of the story of David, one rock, all those guys, all those old men, all those guys were seasoned in battle, and nobody would go against Goliath, and it was a young man who said, no, I got this. He's blaspheming the Lord, and he was willing to stand up for him, not in his own strength and ability, but he knew who the Lord was, and so he took a rock and changed the course of history with the rock. Faith in the Lord, faith in God. So it's exciting just to sit across the desk from you and hear what the Lord's doing. For me, I think one of the main themes, especially this last week, we're reading in Leviticus, so you're seeing how God is holy and he's pure and he wants us to be holy and pure. And so my mind keeps going back to that, like all the animals that had to die because of those different sins and different things, and his desire for purity. And then in my own life, realizing that, if I lived back then, Colby, I mean, I'd be wearing out that path to the temple, and animals I'd be watching an animal. And, we live in a society now where I don't know how many people have ever had to hold an animal down or to watch an animal bleed out. And then I'm a deer hunter. I know what it's like to watch an animal lose its life. I know those things, and to think that my sin is causing that. But then even more, Jesus gave his life for me, and so there's like a seriousness to my sin. It's like a wretchedness and a hatred. And then we're in the gospel, and we're reading about Paul, and Paul's sharing the gospel, and people are, one of two things, they're radically getting saved, so there's like a revival, or there's a riot. People are stuck in rules and traditions. And so in my own life, balancing that place of the wretchedness of my sin, the joy of my salvation, walking with the Lord, listening to him, being obedient to him, knowing that his desire is for me to be obedient to him. And not because I'm earning anything, but because of the great cost, the great love that he's shown me. And then you get to the Psalms, and it's just like icing on the cake. It's just like the praise and the worship, and it enters in. So one of the things I've enjoyed is this dog that we have now. She likes to be walked. Like if you accidentally say the word walk in a sentence, that dog goes absolutely nuts. But what happens is when I do take her for a walk, now I'm forced in this 15-minute where it's just me and the dog and a poop bag. It's me, and then whatever I read, and so I get to ponder and allow those things just to kind of marinate to what the Lord's shown me. And so I've really enjoyed this plan, Colby, and the Old Testament and the New Testament. Like, seriously, think about if we weren't doing this big of a plan, and we were just reading through Leviticus every day.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty brutal, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're tying it all in, so it's good.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the animal sacrifice, I feel like it's easy for that word sacrifice when we're reading it in the Bible in the Old Testament for it to be like almost like watered down. But you're right. I mean, it's legit. You would have to see an animal, be put to death because of, something you did.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Colby, thousands.
Yeah.
And like we're reading, this last week we're reading where they were, and they would kill the animal and they would sprinkle the blood on the person on the altar. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, thousands of animals every day.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy because it's like, you could look at it in two ways where it's like that animalistic nature is just, eat, sleep, hunt, reproduce, and stuff like that. But in the other ways, like that's all they're meant to do. That's all they're meant. All they're doing is what they're supposed to be doing and following, what their not spirit, but like what their instincts leads them to do. And that's all they're doing. They're not straying away because of they're not sinning. They're animals. They're not sinning. And it's an innocent, life.
They don't have a spirit.
Animal life. But yeah, they don't have a spirit. That was a I misspoke. But they're just doing what they're made to do. And in these days, that sacrifice is something that you're just taking away something from doing its natural thing.
I thought about this morning as the dog was harassing me while I was trying to read. I was thinking to myself, like animals were part of their food and stuff as well. And so as a dad, like if you were sinning and then you had to go out in the yard, and so you're taking an animal, so you're taking, food for your family.
Yeah.
And then, kids get attached to animals, and so it's like, Dad, no. And it's like, well, Dad sinned, so now I got to go take this animal. So. Yeah. Hey, so we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
So just a couple questions to throw out there. So first of all, we'd like to know, are you guys enjoying the resource? Is the podcast a blessing? Is there something that we could do different or better that would help you in your reading plan? Secondly, let us know the things that we're putting in there, the helpful links and stuff. Is it helpful? Are you guys using those resources? Is it not helpful? We want to be a blessing. And then we'd like to hear from you on the journey that you're on. So have you enjoyed the reading plan? Do you read digitally, or do you prefer a hard copy of the Bible for your personal reading? Are you using a specific version? Are you using the NASB or the New King James, NLT? Are you reading through the app? Or are you reading the hard copy? And are there ways that we can help encourage you in your reading plan? So we'd like to hear from you. So email us, familystylepod at ccpalmharbor.org. And if you have questions, perhaps maybe you're getting in some stuff and there's some doctrinal questions, or just you don't understand, you're welcome to email So ask a pastor, and that email address is ccph, so that's Calvary Chapel Palm Harbor, ccph, askapastor@gmail.com. And I think that's it. That's a wrap for week number 9. Colby, anything you want to close us out with?
I don't think so. Let's pray us out, Ben.
You want me to pray?
Yeah.
All right. Lord, thank you again for your word. Thank you for technology and the ability to do this, Lord. And we do pray that we are an encouragement. And for those that are listening, Lord, that encourage them in your word, Lord, not just to grow in your word and wisdom and information, but to grow in their love of you and in their relationship with you. Lord, bless the reading of your word this week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right.
Have a good week, guys.
God bless.